video is about Gregston Been, who was a popular DJ in the Turks and Caicos Islands. He was one that everybody knew. And unfortunately, Greg lost his family through divorce, his kids through divorce. And he probably was very popular. And he didn't balance his entertainment career with his family. However, Greg, one day while in his apartment, Greg turned to God. Please enjoy this video and be blessed. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Hi, my name is Gregston Been, and it is such a privilege to be here, to be able to speak to you this day on who I am and where I've come from. And I thank Mr. Seymour for the opportunity to be able to come here and deliver my story. I am a Turks and Caicos Islander, born in the island of Grand Turk, but grew up initially in Sorky and moved to Grand Turk. And growing up in Sorky, you would have to, there are a lot of things that children in Sorky would become. A lot of us became musicians. And one of the thing about us being musicians, all of us had opportunity to learn music some way or the other. It was one of the things of our culture, especially as young men. And growing up and I also having a musical family, my mother being a musician, father's side being musicians, all of them being organists and pianists and so forth, playing in the church. I gravitated to that. Also being from the church in where I was, my mom being part of the prophecy church, you had to learn a musical instrument. That was one of the things that had to happen. And it was it was such a great time in learning music. And so music became such a vital part of who I was from young. I started out at 7, learning how to play the keyboard. And being in the church, I learned to play just about all the instruments in the church. And that was a joy for me, learning the drums and the guitars and even the brass instruments, learning, being a part of the high school band and so forth. And going through school and learning these instruments and so forth, music became so much a part of me that I also became a DJ and I learned how to, the craft of DJing. I didn't only just learn how to play music, I learned the fundamentals of DJing. I learned music. I learned, I gathered a love for all styles of music, all genres of music. And that was the thing for me. I would love oldies, I would love reggae, I would love soca, I would love hip hop. So there was never a time for me that I would just love one side of music. And I became all around with music in that sense. So in the church, I was, like I said, a musician and playing the organ and became one of the primary musicians in the church at that time and in high school. And that was the thing for me. A number of us young men being musicians in the church at that time. And also at that time, I had the opportunity to, while in school still, also becoming a DJ and making a name for myself. So from school time, I was DJing and learning the craft of DJing and being a musician. And after growing into a young man and graduating high school, I slowly left the church, as many young men would do, leaving the church and trying to find your own way, making your own path, making your own decisions. And taking the advice of one of my close friends at the time, and he encouraged me that, hey man, you got this talent and you can do this thing. You're a good DJ. Get some equipment and so forth. So I went and I got the equipment. I bought equipment and started a DJing company, and became popular. Many people would remember, and this is one of the things that laid the foundation to bigger things in my life. Building techno sounds was one thing, because if I would tell people, many people my real name, many people still don't know my real name. They would say, "Hey, techno," and I would sometimes try to tell them my real name, but sometimes people never knew your real name, so you can't get mad if they don't know your real name. So building the techno sound brand and the quote unquote empire of music here in the Turks and Caicos, it was a joy. Like I said, starting to DJ from at a very young age, I had a lot already instilled in me in the music area. So I learned the business area. I learned how to. I used to take trips. I used to take trips to Miami just to go to clubs. I would go away to like twice a month just to go to clubs and hang out and just to see how DJs would play in the States. I would go to Jamaica just to see how DJs played in Jamaica. And that helped me to learn what they were doing on that professional level. And it helped me to progress, I think, rapidly through, the DJing phase. But with that, it came a lot of popularity. It came, it came money. It came new friends and so forth. But at the same time, I had a family at that time, trying to build a family, and discovering that, looking back on it, it really was two things bucking heads. Trying to be an entertainer, entertain the world and entertain everybody, make everybody else happy and dance. And at the same time, you're doing things to your family, you're bringing grief to your family in certain ways, because you become so busy in that. Because I also had a regular job. And having a regular job, it really, you're doing your regular job at day, and then at night, you're out most nights. You're either here in the Turks and Caicos, and I traveled quite a bit. I traveled throughout the Caribbean. I traveled the U.S., traveled Canada, and made a name for myself. Became pretty popular. Became quite popular, and did this thinking with all good intention. That I'm feeding my family. I'm making money. I'm making a name for myself, but at the same time, not understanding that there was things that I was getting hooked to and getting hooked on, and mostly being the spotlight. Getting hooked on the spotlight, being people knowing you, people knowing your name, women knowing your name. You out all night, you're drinking, you're carousing, you having, it's just a fun. It was just fun. And at a certain point in time, it came an end to that, because it came a point where that I think I really mashed up my family life. And I enjoyed music. I love music. I love music with every fiber of my being. But it came a point where the music and the whole lifestyle really mashed up my family. My wife couldn't take it. I lost my wife in that, lost my children, house, everything, and that really hurt. It really hurt. It felt like something I really wasn't ready for it. I didn't know how to handle it. I couldn't put things in perspective. I really had a hard time dealing with it, because sometimes you think everything lasts forever. You would think everything lasts forever. You think doing the wrong thing even would last forever. But that obviously is not the case. And when that happened, it shook my whole world, because I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know how to start over. And in 2011, it all fell apart. So what I ended up doing, like I said, losing everything and seeing the hurt with my children, because at that time my children were young and very impressionable. They were still at that cement age, and having to know where I came from with my parents end up splitting at a very, very touching time in my life. I really didn't expect me to have, or my life to take that same path. And I always hoped that I could have been the type of man that could have kept my family together, but not really knowing what it took to actually keep my family together. So that was really hurtful. And being able to, like I said, in 2011, having to leave my home, I moved into an apartment. And I can remember the date, in November, November 30th, 2011. And moving into the apartment was, I was devastated. That I cried so much. I cried days, I cried nights, not understanding what was happening in my life. My mind was not prepared for it. I certainly was not prepared for it. And after nights and day in and day out, I got to put on a good face because I got to go to work. Put on your good face. You're going through your struggles and people not knowing what you're going through. And I'm still DJing, but at this time too, I'm working, I'm DJing, but it's kind of tough now because things are coming around and my mind, I'm having civil war in my head and not knowing how to cope with what I'm dealing with. And so I'm laying in my bed, I'm on the floor, I'm in a mess. So I started to pray. Like many others, I come from a Christian home. I come from a praying family. I thank God every day for my mommy's covering over me. And I started to pray because I'm now looking for something to restore my happiness. I want to be happy. I want to get back to my life. Not really to get back or move on. I'm really ready to get back to my life. I want to be able to live my life again or whatever. But in my praying to God, and in a selfish way, trying to find God for my own reason, because I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to be depressed and so forth. And I find myself, after a few conversations with the Lord, I find myself asking God to, touch me, to heal me. And I had my wilderness experience in this apartment. And I mean that by saying I'm in this apartment and I'm crying off and on. I'm crying and I'm laying on the floor and I can literally see myself hovering over myself, laying on the ground, crying at days, evenings and afternoons when I get off from work. I no longer have the desire really to go out and entertain anybody. I'm not interested in entertaining or being anybody's entertainer. Those things it's like it was being pulled away from me. I was at the point where I was at a gig at a popular establishment here, and while I was there, it was in September, and the following year, because I'm still trying to, I still had gigs that I had to fulfill. So I'm still trying to fulfill gigs that I already had commitments for. And while I'm at this establishment playing, and I'm there, I'm drinking. I'm there and I'm drinking, and I remember I got 2 beers in my hand, and one open and drinking, and all of a sudden I'm like, I just can't do it anymore. And I just take the 2 of them and just throw them in the garbage. And this was a September in 2012, and literally the taste for alcohol just left my mouth, and I just couldn't be bothered with it. And that's the last time I actually drank a beer, to be honest. And at that point, I knew it was time for something else. But mine, at this point, I had already given my life to the Lord because I wanted something different. But I was not at a point where I was seeking the Lord for him to actually do what he needed to do in me. But it was already happening in me. So by him pulling the taste for alcohol in my mouth, I mean, that was not even something that I asked for. It just happened. And from that, I realized I found myself in my apartment afternoons, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoons, Friday afternoons when when everybody is at happy hour, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at happy hour, I was at home on my knees praying, seeking the Lord for myself. I went from praying to God just to try help me and restore me and to give me happiness again, to finding myself seeking the Lord, because I know I had hit a wall. I hit a wall, and there was no way of going through that wall. There was no way of going over that wall. There was no way of going around that wall by myself. And I needed the Lord's help. And it was undeniable at that point. So I knew my only way out was to seek the Lord. And at that point, I even had, I wanted to make it, I didn't think I was actually going to make it public, but I wanted to let persons who were close to me in the industry and music and so forth, let them know that I was retiring and getting out of it. So somehow I notified I also had a popular show on radio, and I notified the director of the radio station that I'm retiring. I can't do it anymore. I can't even play music that I love anymore. And he thought it best that, hey, let's conduct an interview. And I did an interview on a Friday afternoon. I remember that interview. And I did an interview announcing my retirement from DJing and from entertainment. And that moment made me realize that I had a higher calling, because after I gave that announcement to the radio and previewed the world, it was the world, especially the Turks and Caicos, giving the Turks and Caicos what was on my heart and where I was being led, the amount of calls that poured in afterwards, or people who said they were touched by that. And because it was a point that I knew that I had so many people that followed me and inspired them in so much ways. It would have been good. It probably was positive, but understanding it now, it wasn't godly in a sense, because you can lead people positively and still not lead them in the right direction. So from that interview, I had an outpouring of calls. People called me and said, man, I heard the interview and you giving your testimony and you announcing your retirement. And it touched me. And I've been following you for so long. And, some of them call with, they don't know what they can do now that I retired. But it was a move that I had to make, if not just for my survival, but to see what God would want to do next with me. And I did that. People being touched, me moving on. And I continued seeking the Lord through all of that. I continued seeking the Lord. I found myself studying the Word. I never dreamt that I would find myself running after God the way that I found myself over the next few years after that. And I did. I found myself listening to a lot of preaching and reading the Word, because I knew where I came from. I knew the things that had me bound. I let a good thing turn me into a slave. And that was a horrible thing. And realizing the influence that I had while I was in entertainment, I realized I destroyed so many lives. I realized that I had an impact and I used it for what I wanted for then. Like I said, I became popular, made some money and all that, but at what cost? I destroyed so many things in the process, families, and I destroyed my family, I destroyed friends, so it actually led me to a place sometimes when I sat back and thought about it, it led me to a place of regret, like, what did I do? I mean, and it makes me feel sometimes, and gives me the passion and the energy to run like how I run, because if it wasn't irreparable damage, I'm willing to repair stuff at this stage. But what happened after that, me seeking the Lord, I joined the church that I now attend, the Anglican Church, and I became part of the ACM, the Anglican Church man, where under Father Been, and Father Been, being a family member also, we really got close, and he took time with me and he helped to mentor me in a lot of areas, and he wouldn't let me go. But with all that, I began to heal. And I asked the Lord, I started going to church, and I said, Lord, what would you want me to do, with, now that I've decided that I'm going to truly follow you, what are your plans for me? What am I going to do? I was ready to go to church, really, because I started enjoying church. Church was the thing to do now, and I was going to go to church and sit on the bench and have my time and worship, and because I became a worshiper. I became home in my house. I became a hand lifter and a praiser and so forth. I became a worshiper. And I remember right there in the house asking the Lord, what would you have me to do? And not thinking that it would be anything out of the way, but I was like, I want to do something, but it ain't got to be all of that. It's just, what's small, something I probably could do. And the Lord spoke to me and said, if you think that all the things that you learned in the secular world through entertainment, all the skills that you've acquired, all the knowledge that you gained in the secular world in entertainment and music, that I'm going to allow you to now come into church and sit in the back bench and just be an observer, you're wrong. And from that moment, I understood that everything that I went through, the 15 plus years I spent in entertainment, was me God preparing me to offer this gift back to Him. So the first thing the Lord laid on my heart was He wanted me to get involved with youth. And that was one of the things I did. I got involved with the youth at the church, being the youth coordinator at St. Monica, and found myself also leading worship in church, heading the media, the music and media ministry. So all the things that I learned in the secular world through entertainment, although those things sometimes bring back memories and they sometimes they make your heart flutter, I give God praise because He allowed me to learn them for a great purpose. So I find myself now often in the schools talking to young men. I visit schools often. I often visit churches to speak. Whatever I'm allowed to do, whatever the Lord calls me to do and people ask me to do, as long as there's an avenue and I'm able to offer this, if it's speaking, if it's just being present, I make myself available. Napoleon Hill said, you can never start over, but you can always change the direction. And I am grateful for the Lord allowing me to change my direction. And some of us have had a second chance. I thank God for 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 10 chances in His grace, that He actually allowed me to be somebody who can actually be an instrument and be an inspiration to others. And I had a lot of feelings, and you may have had a lot of feelings, but I want to guarantee you that as long as you don't stop, go through your storm, keep yourself moving, and if you haven't, there's a God that is always willing to listen, and He's always willing to help. He can be your strength, He can be your helper, He can be your keeper. And I thank Him for what He's done in my life, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to share my story with you.
I am so touched by this video. And I'm touched because God, even though Greg was in the world doing so many things, but his experience in the world, the things that he learned, the organization that he learned, he's able to apply it in the church. He's able to apply it in speaking engagements to the young people. So God can use you the way He used Greg. Thank you, Greg, for sharing your story on how your life has been transformed from being in the world now into the Word of God. Be blessed.